the beast within him. A restless storm. It wasn't anger, not aggression. It was a profound, hollow ache, a void that had gnawed at him for years. Fenris, his wolf, paced the cage of his ribs, a constant prowling reminder of the emptiness beside him, the phantom limb of a bond that had never, ever formed. He stood on the overlook, granite cool beneath his bare feet, and watched. Below him, the life of his pack unfolded. Mated pairs walked with hands linked, their wolves humming in contentment, a silent music he could sense, but never truly feel. Children, wild and shrieking with laughter, chased each other through the twilight, their powers flickering like tiny fireflies. The Blood Moon pack was strong. It was thriving. And he, their alpha, was utterly alone. His beta, Kale, materialized from the shadows of the pines. A solid, familiar presence. "You carry the weight of this pack, Alpha." Kale's voice was low. "But you carry it by yourself. The elders, they're murmuring. The deadline, I am aware of the deadline." Porter's voice was a low rumble, holding the distinct edge of a snarl. His deadline, a foolish promise made a decade ago to a dying father. Find his mate. Secure the pack's future. Now, with only months to go, the promise felt less like a duty, and more like a chain. Kale's gaze remained steady. They speak of alliances, of strategic pairings. Porter's hands clenched into fists, hard, a political match. A Luna chosen for bloodline, not destiny. The thought was a violation, a betrayal of the one thing his soul craved, an insult to her, to the woman whose face he saw only in his dreams. No. The word was absolute, final. A low growl of warning coloring the edges. He would not settle. He would not bend. Ignoring Kale's weary sigh, Porter turned. He looked away from the warm lights of his pack and towards the impenetrable darkness to the east, towards the forbidden Heartwood glade, a place of wild, untamed magic, a place legend claimed was poison to their kind. But tonight, the ache in his chest wasn't a void. It was a pull, a faint, irrational tug coming from the depths of that forbidden forest, a single thread of impossible hope. Fenris rose within him, not with a prowl, but with a surge of desperate, primal certainty. There, and for the first time in a long, long time, the man and the beast were in perfect, reckless agreement. He would follow the thread, no matter where it led. Chapter 1. The lab wasn't much, just a corner of their small cabin, crowded with heat lamps and the earthy smell of damp soil. But for Rachel, it was everything. So she focused, poured everything she had into her work, a fire to burn away the fear. Lily, her sister, sat curled in a nearby armchair, a thick blanket pooled around her thin shoulders. Her breathing was a soft, shallow sound, a constant, painful rhythm in the quiet of the room. "Look, Rach." Lily's voice was a whisper frail as a dry leaf. She pointed a trembling finger toward the window. He came back. Rachel glanced over. A small, blue-crested songbird on the sill, chirping. Lily smiled, a rare, brilliant flash of light in her pale face. Maybe it was fate. That Lily, fading from a world of humans, felt so close to the world of nature. Rachel's heart gave a familiar, painful twist. She crossed the room, kneeling by her sister's chair as her scientist brain kicked in. She checked Lily's pulse. Thready. Weak. "He's pretty, sweetie." Rachel's voice was carefully steady. Deep down, she knew the truth. Pretty birds and whispered observations. They weren't enough. Not nearly enough. She needed a cure. A real one. For an illness that baffled every doctor, but was slowly, surely stealing her sister away. Which meant this work. It was all that mattered. Later that evening, long after Lily was asleep, Rachel stood by the window. The cabin was bordered by the Blackwood Forest, a deep, dark stretch of trees that most folks avoided. But then, an odd feeling. A strange, insistent pull from the heart of the woods, a silent call she couldn't possibly explain. It had to be exhaustion. She turned back to her glowing lamps and the silent language of her plants. She had to solve this puzzle. She just had to.
Chapter 2. Power. It was a heavy coat. Porter felt its weight in the silence when he passed, in the constant, thrumming responsibility for every single soul on his land. He stood on the great ridge, looking down at the scattered lights of the pack houses. They were safe, fed, protected. It's why he worked so hard. Still, that hollow ache echoed in his chest, a lonely space where a mate was supposed to be. Moments later, Kyle, his beta, joined him. His scent, pine and loyalty, was a familiar comfort. Alpha, Kale began, his tone respectful but firm. The mating moon, it's only 3 cycles away. Porter didn't look at him. He knew. The pack needs a Luna, Porter. They need the strength of a bonded alpha pair. I am aware. The words were a low growl, a vibration in his chest. His wolf, Fenris, paced restlessly under his skin. 10 years. 10 years he'd searched for the other half of his soul. The woman fate had chosen for him. What was he supposed to do? Just pick one? The Silvercrest pack has offered their alpha's daughter, Kyle pressed. An alliance would— No! The word was a crack of thunder. Absolute. Final. The very idea of a political mating felt like poison. A betrayal of a promise made to himself, to his wolf, and to the faceless woman who haunted his sleep. He would have his fated mate, or he would have no one. As a result, his desperation was a living thing inside him. I will not chain myself to a woman I am not destined for, he said, his voice flat with finality. He turned from Kyle, his gaze drawn to the one part of their territory that was absolutely forbidden, the Heartwood Glade, an ancient, eerie place that hummed with a strange, wild energy. No matter how hard he tried to be a logical leader, something primal called to him from those woods, a whisper, a promise. And in that moment, a reckless decision was made. He would go. Tonight, maybe, just maybe. His destiny was waiting. Waiting in the one place he was never ever supposed to look.
Chapter 3. The pull. It was stronger tonight. Impossible to ignore. It hummed under her skin, a strange vibration that seemed to sync with her own pulse. So, leaving a note for Lily, she grabbed her satchel and stepped out into the cool night. The moon was huge, bright. It cast long, dancing shadows through the trees of the Blackwood Forest. She didn't know what she was looking for. Her body just moved, an instinct, carrying her deeper and deeper into the woods. The air grew, heavy with the smell of damp earth and something else. Something electric. As if pulled by an invisible string, she found herself in a small, hidden clearing. And she saw it. In the center of the glade, a single flower bloomed. Its petals, the color of the deepest emerald, glowed with a soft internal light, pulsing, gently. It was beautiful, impossible, a botanist's dream. Could this be it? The key to helping Lily? Her heart skipped a beat. Without thinking, she knelt, her fingers reaching, trembling, to touch a luminous petal. Snap! A twig breaking behind her. Loud, close. Her breath caught. She spun around, her heart hammering against her ribs. A man stood at the edge of the clearing. No, not just a man. He was huge, built with the raw power of a predator, and his eyes, they burned with a golden intensity, a fire that saw right through her, into her. The space between them crackled, charged with a sudden, terrifying heat. Her world tilted on its axis. He didn't move. He just stared. A gaze so fierce, so possessive, it felt like a physical touch. Something inside her shifted, woke up. A low thrum of recognition that was both terrifying and thrilling. The forest itself seemed to hold its breath, watching, waiting. He took a single step forward. Her name, a silent question on his lips, hung in the air between them. Before either could speak, the truth of the moment crashed down on her. This stranger, this place, this impossible flower, it was all connected, and her quiet, predictable life was over. Chapter 4. The moment their eyes locked, the glow of the emerald flower vanished, swallowed by an unnatural darkness as the eclipse reached its peak. A chilling howl ripped through the forest, not from the man before her, but from the shadows all around. Without warning, twisted shapes burst from the trees, creatures that were not quite men, not quite wolves, their eyes glowing with a hungry, red light. Terror, cold and sharp, stole her breath. She scrambled backward, tripped over a root. Before she could move, the golden-eyed stranger was no longer a man. In the span of a single breath, he exploded into a massive black wolf, a beast of pure power and fury. He met the attackers in a clash of snarls and tearing claws. It was a whirlwind of brutal, deadly motion. One rogue lunged for her. Her voice trembled as she screamed. But then, the black wolf was there, a living shield between her and death. He dispatched the attacker with a horrifying final crunch. He turned to her then, his golden eyes pinning her in place. He was still a wolf, panting, fur matted with dark blood. She saw something ancient in his gaze, a raw, possessive fire that terrified her more than the rogues ever could. He stalked forward, her instincts screamed. She tried to crawl away, her mind shrieking, "Run, run, run!" But there was nowhere to go. He nudged her shoulder with his massive head, surprisingly gentle for a moment, and then pain, sharp, blinding. His teeth sank into the flesh above her collarbone, a searing agony that felt like being struck by lightning. A sound ripped from her throat. Not a scream. A growl. A sound of pure shock and violation. The world tilted, then shattered into a million pieces of light and pain. And like that, as the mark of his bite burned like a brand on her skin, she knew her life was no longer her own. It had been claimed. Chapter 5. She fled. Adrenaline and raw terror. They propelled her through the dark woods, the burning pain on her shoulder a terrifying reminder of what had just happened. She didn't stop until she slammed the cabin door shut, her chest heaving with sobs. She slid the bolt home, leaning against the wood as if she could hold back the entire forest. A monster had touched her. A monster had bitten her, claimed her. What did that even mean? A beat later, a heavy knock echoed on the door. "Go away!" she shrieked, her voice cracking with hysteria. "Let me explain." A low, rumbling voice answered from the other side. His voice, the man from the woods. "Explain what? That you're some kind of thing?" she yelled, her thoughts spinning into chaos. "I protected you," he stated, his tone maddeningly calm. "They would have killed you." "And you... what did you do?" she countered, her hand instinctively covering the searing bite mark.
Porter leaned his forehead against the solid wood of the cabin door. The scent of her fear, her pain. It was a torment to his wolf. Fenris whined, desperate to soothe the mate he had been forced to claim so violently. He had seen the rogues. He had felt her terror through their nascent bond. And instinct, pure primal instinct, had taken over. It was the only way. To mark her was to tie her to his life force, to shield her with his own alpha power. He had saved her life. He knew that. But deep down, he knew the truth. He had also terrified her, to her very soul. "We are fated mates," he tried to explain, the words feeling clumsy and wholly inadequate. "The mark. It connects us. It will protect you." A shaky, broken laugh came from inside. "Protect me? You branded me like an animal." With every heartbeat, his frustration grew. She didn't understand. How could she possibly understand? Suddenly, through the door, he felt it. A flicker. a tiny, almost imperceptible shift in her, and at the same time, the faint scent of illness from within the cabin. It lessened, just for a moment. What was that? What had the mark just done?
Chapter 6. Rachel ignored the man outside, her fury giving way to a chilling, sharp confusion. The burning on her shoulder began to fade, replaced by a strange, warm tingle. As if summoned, her gaze drifted to the armchair where Lily slept. And her heart, it stopped. Lily's breathing. It wasn't the shallow, thread-like rhythm from before. It was deeper, steadier. Color had returned to her cheeks. It was a small change, almost invisible. But to Rachel, who had studied every single nuance of this illness, it was a miracle, a literal miracle. Her mind raced. The flower, the man, the bite, the change in Lily. It couldn't be a coincidence. It just couldn't. With a surge of new resolve, she unbolted the door and threw it open. He stood there, a tall, powerful silhouette against the moonlight. He looked worried, his golden eyes filled with an emotion she couldn't possibly name. "My sister," she said, her voice low, intense. "What did you do to my sister?" His eyes widened in understanding. "I felt it too. The mark, it's tied to your life force. It must have strengthened her." He took a step closer. "Those rogues will be back. They weren't just random attackers, they were hunting. They sensed what you are even if you don't." "What I am?" she asked, completely bewildered. "I'm a botanist." "You are more than that," he said softly. "And because of that, you are in danger. I can protect you. My pack can protect you." He offered a choice that felt like no choice at all. "Come with me, to the Blood Moon lands. We can keep you and your sister safe, and we can find answers, together." She stared at him, torn between her scientific mind that screamed impossible and the undeniable proof of Lily's improved health. Her gut, her every instinct for self-preservation, told her to run from this man. But her love for her sister, it was stronger than her fear, which meant she had to trust him. For now. "Fine," she whispered, the word tasting like ash and surrender. "For my sister, I'll go." Chapter 7. The path opened into a wide, bustling clearing, the Blood Moon Pack's home. It wasn't a town, not really, but a collection of large, sturdy-looking log cabins and a massive central lodge that looked as old as the forest itself. And then she felt it. Dozens of eyes on her. Men and women stopped what they were doing, their gazes a mixture of raw curiosity and deep suspicion. Her skin prickled. Under the weight of their stares, Porter's hand settled on the small of her back. Possessive. It was meant to be reassuring, she supposed, but it only made her feel more like a possession on display. Truth be told, she wanted to shrink away. Instead, she lifted her chin. A cool defiance she didn't feel. She was a scientist, not some prize to be paraded.
Porter felt the pack's collective curiosity. He also felt Rachel's unease, a sharp spike through their new, fragile bond. From there, Cale approached, his expression tight. "Porter." Cale's voice was a low murmur. "A human? You marked a human? The pack won't understand. She has no pack blood, no wolf." "She is my mate," Porter cut him off, his voice a low command that left no room for argument. "And she is your Luna. You will show her respect. That is all you need to understand." Because of that, he knew he had to be firm. From the very start. He guided Rachel forward, his eyes scanning the crowd until he found his grandmother. Luna Ilara stood on the porch of the main lodge, her face a roadmap of wrinkles, her silver hair in a long braid. Her eyes, as sharp and golden as his own, were fixed on Rachel with a knowing intensity that sent a shiver down his spine. She wasn't just looking at a human girl. She was looking at something else entirely. Soon after, while walking the grounds, Rachel paused by a withered rose bush. On instinct, She reached out, her fingers brushing against a dying stem. Then, a faint warmth spread from her fingertips. Before her very eyes, the stem seemed to straighten. A tiny green leaf unfurled. Her breath caught. She snatched her hand back as if burned. What was happening to her?
Chapter 8. Her senses were on fire. That was the only way to describe it. The scent of roasting meat, the murmur of a dozen conversations, the distant cry of a hawk. It was all too much. A constant sensory assault that made her head ache. She felt it. This was a side effect of the mark. Porter tried to explain it, his voice a low, patient rumble beside her. "The bond is settling," he said. "It heightens everything. It connects you. To me. To the pack." She flinched. "I don't want to be connected." His jaw tightened, but for once, he said nothing. Later, an old woman approached her. It was the one from the porch. Luna Alera. "The earth speaks to you, child." The woman's voice was like dry leaves rustling. Her golden eyes seemed to pierce right through Rachel's defenses. "An ancient echo in your blood. You feel it, don't you?" Rachel stiffened. "I'm a scientist. I believe in facts, not echoes." She said this because her logical mind was the only shield she had left. Alara smiled, a slow, knowing expression. "Science is simply one language the world uses to describe its magic. There are others, older ones." Before Rachel could argue, a warning horn blared from the edge of the territory. Shouts erupted. "Rogues!" The word shot through her, a jolt of pure ice. Porter was instantly at her side, a low growl in his chest. But as her pulse raced, something else surged within her. Not fear this time, but a hot, fierce wave of protectiveness. Her wolf pressed forward, a strange instinct she didn't know she had. For Lily, for this place, her only sanctuary. Under the weight of this new feeling, she stared at the ground and, without her willing it, a thick web of thorny vines erupted from the soil at her feet. Sharp, angry. Everyone around her gasped. She stared at the impossible thorns, her heart pounding. She didn't know what scared her more, the rogues outside the walls, or the strange, wild power blooming inside of her.
Chapter 9. "You need to understand the borders," Porter said, leading Rachel on a patrol the next day. He needed to keep her close. More importantly, he needed her to see the danger was real. Fenris was a constant, restless presence, his wolf on high alert. The scent of the rogues from the day before still lingered at the edge of their territory, a foul promise of violence. He watched her as she walked, her brow furrowed in concentration. She was trying so hard to fit this new world into the neat boxes of her old one. He found it endearing and incredibly dangerous. "What are they after?" she asked, her voice quiet. "Power. Territory," he answered. "They are lone wolves, cast out for their violence. They follow a ruthless alpha named Valerius."
As he spoke the name Valerius, the air grew cold. Without another word, they stepped into a shadowy part of the trail. And then, they were not alone. 5 of them. The same red-eyed rogues from the glade. They burst from the trees, moving with a terrifying, coordinated speed. Porter shifted in an instant, a blur of black fur and fury, and the fight began. But this time was different. They weren't just attacking Porter. They were coming for her. One broke through, lunging. Her body moved on instinct. A scream rose in her throat, but it came out as a wordless cry of fury. She threw her hands up, and the very ground beneath the rogue's feet exploded. Thick, gnarled roots, like woody serpents, erupted from the soil. They coiled around the rogue's legs, dragging him down with a sickening crack of bone. The other rogues froze, their red eyes wide not with fear, but with a sudden, greedy interest. They stared at her. "The girl," one of them rasped, his voice a broken thing. "She's the one." Then, as quickly as they appeared, they retreated, melting back into the forest. Porter shifted back, his chest heaving. He stared at her, his golden eyes wide with shock and something else. Awe. Just as the silence stretched, Luna Alara appeared at the edge of the clearing, her gaze on the groaning, root-bound rogue. "It is as the prophecies foretold," she breathed, her voice filled with a terrible reverence. "The Earth's fury is reawakened, and the Alpha's mark, it was the key." Chapter 10. The days that followed were a blur, a confusing blur of lessons. Luna Alara would sit with her by a crackling fire, her voice a low hum as she spoke of earth witches and ancient power. Rachel tried to listen, she really did. But no matter how hard she tried, her scientific mind rebelled against the talk of magic and destiny. It all felt like folklore, like stories told to scare children. She wanted facts, data, proof, not prophecies. What she couldn't deny, however, was Lily. Every morning her sister was a little stronger. The pale, papery look of her skin was replaced by a soft, healthy glow. She could walk to the window by herself now. In fact, her laughter, once a rare and precious sound, now echoed through their small guest cabin daily. This progress was concrete. It was real. And deep down, she knew the truth. Lily's healing was tied to her. Not only that, it seemed to grow stronger whenever she was near Porter, whenever she allowed herself to feel the faint, warm pulse of the bond between them. Which meant her sister's life depended on a connection she still feared, a cruel, impossible bargain. To save Lily, she had to surrender a piece of herself to the powerful, possessive alpha who had claimed her. Could she do it? Could she give up her independence, her very sense of self, for the one person she loved most in the world? That night, as she wrestled with this impossible choice, a grim-faced Kale arrived at their door. He held a scroll sealed with a black fang. "A message from Valerius," he announced, his voice tight. "For the Alpha." Porter unrolled it, his face turning to stone as he read. "What is it?" Rachel asked, her chest aching with a sudden, sharp dread. He looked at her, his golden eyes dark with a chilling fury. "He knows who you are. He calls you the Earth's chosen. And he's demanding we hand you over to him." Chapter 11. The air in Luna Alara's room was heavy, with the scent of dried herbs and old secrets. Valerius's message had changed everything. The threat was no longer a faceless pack of rogues. It had a name, and it wanted her. "The prophecies were clear," Alara began, her voice low and somber. She sat across from Rachel, a heavy leather-bound book open on her lap. "But the history is what you need to understand." As the silence stretched, Alara told her a story that shattered Rachel's world. "Ages ago," she said, "the first werewolves did not draw their power from the moon alone. They had a pact with the Earth Witches. The witches channeled the magic of the living world, and in return, the wolves offered their protection. Two halves of a whole." Rachel listened, her mind struggling to keep up. "But a faction of wolves grew greedy," Alara continued, her expression grim. "They were led by Valerius's ancestor. He didn't want a partnership. He wanted to own the magic. He betrayed the witches, hunted them, and used a dark ritual to sever their connection to the earth, suppressing their power for generations." Between one breath and the next, Rachel felt the entire world shift beneath her. "My family," she whispered, the words barely audible. I'm one of them?" "You are the last of their direct line," Alara confirmed, her voice soft with sorrow. "And Heron's syndrome isn't a disease, child. It is a curse. It is the lingering effect of that severed bond. A slow fading of those with witch blood in their veins." Her thoughts spun. Lily. Oh God, Lily. The lunar bloom eclipse was prophesied as the time when a new witch could be reawakened, Alara said, her gaze intense. But the suppressed magic needed a catalyst, a jolt of wild, primal magic to break the curse. She pointed a gentle, wrinkled finger toward Rachel's shoulder. The Alpha's mark. It was the key. Porter didn't just claim you, child, as if fate itself demanded it. His bite unlocked the magic that was dormant inside you all along. Chapter 12. She stumbled out of Alara's cabin, her legs unsteady. The world, a blur. Earthwitch, curse, prophecy. The words echoed in her head. She didn't know where she was going, but she ended up by the river that bordered the compound, the water rushing over smooth stones. She wrapped her arms around herself, trying to hold the shattered pieces of her identity together.
Porter found her there, a lone figure beneath the moonlight. The turmoil rolling off her was a storm he could feel through the bond. Her fear, her shock, her dawning awe. It was all there. He approached slowly, not wanting to startle her. "Rachel," he said softly. She looked up, her eyes wide and luminous in the dark. In that moment, she wasn't the defiant scientist or the terrified victim. She was just a woman carrying a weight too heavy to bear alone. Without thinking, he closed the distance, pulling her against his chest. Her body was stiff for a second, then she sagged against him, a shuddering breath leaving her lips. "My wolf," he murmured into her hair, the words a raw confession. "He's been half mad since the moment I saw you. He would tear the world apart to keep you safe. And I'm not much better." She tilted her head back, and her scent, wildflowers and rain-soaked earth, filled his senses. Her lips were slightly parted, an unconscious invitation. The space between them burned. Her pulse raced, a frantic rhythm he could feel against his own chest. As if the world narrowed to this single point in time, he lowered his head. He was going to kiss her. He had to. But then, he saw it, a flicker of fear still lingering in her eyes. The fear of him. And he stopped. His lips hovered a breath from hers. He had to earn her trust, not just take what his wolf demanded. Before either could speak, a piercing howl of alarm shattered the night. It was followed by another, and another. An attack. The moment was broken, shattered. The promise of a kiss, replaced by the certainty of a fight.
Chapter 13. Everything had changed. The world was the same. The trees still green, the sky still blue. But Rachel was different. The knowledge of her heritage, the truth about Lily's curse, had settled deep in her bones. As a result, the fear was gone, replaced by a cold, sharp determination. She would not be a victim in someone else's prophecy. No, she would be a weapon. She devoured Luna Alara's lessons now, her scientific mind finally clicking into place. Magic, she realized, had its own set of rules, its own physics. So she began to experiment, merging her two worlds. She learned to identify plants not just by their cellular structure, but by the unique hum of energy they gave off. More importantly, she learned to draw that energy through the bond, through the mark on her shoulder. A conduit, a living channel to Porter's raw, steady strength. Instead of avoiding him, she now found herself seeking him out. Her body moved on instinct, drawn to him like a flower to the sun. "Teach me," she said, finding him by the training grounds one afternoon. He turned, his golden eyes filled with a soft surprise. "Teach you what?" "Everything," she insisted, her voice gaining strength. "How the pack fights, your strategies, your defenses. If Valerius is coming for me, I won't be the pack's weakness. I will be its shield."
Pride swelled in Porter's chest, so fierce and bright it almost hurt. This was the woman he'd seen in his dreams. Not a timid human, but a queen ready to claim her power. This was his Luna. "All right," he agreed, a slow, rumbling smile spreading across his face. "But my lessons are harder than my grandmother's." He spent hours with her, showing her patrol routes on a map, explaining their defensive formations. And she absorbed it all, her sharp mind asking questions he'd never even considered. She saw patterns he missed, pointed out weaknesses in their oldest strategies. She wasn't just learning, she was improving them. While she worked, he felt the bond between them hum with a new kind of energy. It wasn't just fate anymore. It was respect. It was admiration. It was the thrill of finding a true partner. In fact, as they stood over the map, their shoulders brushing, he felt it, a surge of their combined power flowing between them. He saw the trees outside the window rustle and bend as if listening. He felt it. They were stronger together, and he knew with a certainty that shook him to his very core that he was falling hopelessly, completely in love with her.
Chapter 14. They had done it. They had combined her earth magic with the pack's fighting skills, creating a trap that had ensnared a group of rogue scouts without a single drop of blood being shed. A thrill of victory, sharp and sweet, sang through her veins. That evening, she walked by the river, the water, a silver ribbon beneath the moonlight. She felt him approach before she heard him, a warm, solid presence that her soul now recognized as home.
He found her by the water's edge, her silhouette a thing of breathtaking beauty. Fenris purred in his chest, a low, rumbling sound of pure contentment. This was his mate, his strong, brilliant, perfect mate. Without another word, he moved behind her. He gently brushed her hair aside, exposing the faint, silvery lines of the mark his teeth had left, the symbol of their bond, his claim. He lowered his head and pressed his lips to it, not with hunger, but with pure reverence. A kiss of ownership, yes, but also a promise of profound love. He felt her shudder, but she didn't pull away. Instead, she leaned back against his chest, and she let it happen.
As his lips touched the mark, fire bloomed beneath her skin, a dizzying, wonderful heat that melted the last of her resistance. This wasn't a violation. This wasn't a surrender. This was a completion. As if pulled by an invisible string, she turned in his arms, her hands coming up to cup his jaw. His golden eyes were dark with a desire so intense it made her breath catch. The space between them burned. Her chest ached with a longing so fierce she thought it might break her. Porter, she whispered. When her name left his lips in a ragged, broken breath, the tension shattered. He lowered his head, and their lips finally met. It was a searing, desperate kiss. A kiss that spoke of lonely years and fated meetings, of battles fought and a future claimed. It was the taste of pine, of earth, of home. But then, a horn blared from the compound, a frantic, piercing scream of alarm. It was followed by the smell of smoke and the roar of unnatural fire. The kiss was over. The moment, gone. What followed was chaos. They raced back to find the pack's healing den engulfed in black, magical flames, and Kyle. Kyle was down, a cursed blade buried deep in his side.
Chapter 15. Rage. Blinding. Absolute. That was all Porter felt as he knelt by Kyle's side, the black flames licking at the edges of the healing den, refusing to be quenched by water. The pack's healers were frantic, their remedies useless against the dark magic clinging to the wound. His beta was dying. His pack was wounded. And it was all because of him. Because he'd brought her here. The guilt. It was a physical weight. This wasn't a random raid. He snarled, his voice a low grrl of contained fury. This was a message. As if on cue, a pack scout ran forward, holding a blackened arrow. A scroll was tied to it. Porter ripped it free. The message was short. The script, elegant and cruel. The Earth's power is wasted on a mere vessel. A king should not have to ask for power. He should take it. I will see you soon, little witch, and we shall become one.
Rachel read the words over Porter's shoulder, and a cold dread unlike anything she had ever known washed over her. He didn't want to control her. He didn't want to use her. He wanted to absorb her, to fuse her earth magic with his alpha power. What kind of monster would that create? An alpha witch. Luna Alara's voice was a horrified whisper from behind them. She had seen the scroll, her ancient eyes wide with a new kind of fear. That is his goal, to twist the pact, to corrupt the balance for his own endless power. The weight of it all pressed down on Rachel, the wounded pack members, Cale's labored breathing, the smug cruelty of Valerius's note. This was her fault. They were suffering because of a legacy she never knew she had. "How do we fight that?" she asked, her voice trembling. "If he's that powerful, what can we do?" Luna Alara looked at her, her expression grim. "There are old ways," she said, her voice barely audible. "Ancient rituals, a way to amplify your power, to meet his head-on." She paused, her gaze heavy. "But the ritual, it's dangerous. It demands a great sacrifice. And if it goes wrong," she took a shaky breath, "it could destroy you, completely." Chapter 16. Hope. It was a dangerous, fluttering thing in Rachel's chest. The ritual chamber was a small cavern deep beneath the main lodge, the air humming with an ancient, earthy power. Luna Alara stood beside her, chanting in a language that felt older than words, a language her soul almost remembered. Rachel closed her eyes and reached out with her mind, not to the plants in her lab, but to the deep, thrumming heart of the forest itself. She felt for the power, the raw green magic that was her birthright. For a moment, she had it. Power flooded her veins, a rushing, exhilarating torrent of life. It was more than she had ever imagined. The bond pulsed, and she could feel Porter's strength, his awe, his unwavering belief in her. This was it. This would be enough to face Valerius. But then, something went wrong. Horribly wrong. A cold, black tendril of magic, like a thread of ice in a warm river, snaked into the flow. It felt alien, vicious. It twisted her power, turning it back on itself. A scream ripped from her throat as the magic soured, turning from life to poison. The power didn't just leave her, it was torn away, leaving a gaping, hollow void. The backlash threw her back against the cavern wall, her body weak and trembling, her every muscle aching. "Rachel!" Alara cried out, rushing to her side. But Rachel barely heard her. All she could feel was the bond, and through it, a sudden, sharp spike of pain from her sister. What was worse, she felt Lily's steady breathing, the miracle she had cherished, falter. The magic, her magic, hadn't just failed, it had hurt her. Truth be told, her attempt to become a shield had only made her a bigger danger. The taste in her mouth wasn't power. It was ash. And in the quiet that followed, a single, horrifying thought consumed her. Her power wasn't a gift. It was a curse that would poison everyone she loved.
Chapter 17. He felt her power shatter. The bond, it went from a roaring fire to a dying ember in an instant. And his own strength, it seemed to leach away with it. Fenris howled in his mind, a sound of pure agony. Before he could even get to the ritual cavern, the attack horn screamed. This time it wasn't a skirmish, it was an invasion. Valerius's forces poured over the western ridge, a massive, snarling wave of rogues driven by dark magic. They moved with an unnatural speed, their eyes burning red. "To the wall!" Porter roared, his alpha voice cutting through the chaos. He shifted, the change a desperate, furious burst of energy. He was a black-furred whirlwind of claws and teeth, fighting with the strength of a leader whose world was collapsing. But for every rogue he took down, 3 more took its place. They were overwhelmed, hopelessly overwhelmed. Even so, he fought on. He saw Cale, barely recovered, go down under a swarm of rogues near the healing den. With a savage snarl, Porter launched himself into the fray, fighting to protect his fallen beta. He felt a searing pain as claws raked his flank, but he ignored it. He had to protect his pack. He had to protect her.
Rachel watched from the door of the main lodge, her body too weak to even stand properly, useless, a liability. That's what she was. She saw the pack fighting, saw them falling. She saw Porter, a magnificent, terrifying beast, putting himself between the enemy and his people. And she saw the rogues trying to break through the line, their eyes fixed on her. She felt every blow Porter took as if it were her own. Each wound he suffered sent a wave of nausea and pain through her. At the same time, she could feel Lily's life force flickering, weakening with every passing minute. She had done this. Her failure, her weakness, had brought this destruction down upon them all. She wasn't their salvation. She was their doom. The weight of her failure. It was a stone in her chest, drowning her. Chapter 18. The world narrowed, a tunnel of violence and fear. She saw a massive rogue, larger than the others, break through the line. It charged, directly, at her. Before she could even move, Porter was there. He intercepted the beast, his body taking the full, brutal impact of the charge. A sound, a wet, sickening crack echoed in the chaos, and Porter was thrown back, his massive wolf form collapsing to the ground in a heap. He shifted back into a man, broken and bleeding. Porter! Her scream was a raw, broken thing. The fighting around them seemed to fade into a dull roar. The rogues parted, and a tall, dark-haired man walked through them, his steps unhurried, his lips curled in a triumphant sneer. Valerius. He stopped, looking down at Porter's fallen form, then his cold eyes landed on her. What a shame, Valerius said, his voice smooth as poison. All that power, and he still couldn't protect you. Rachel scrambled to Porter's side, her hands hovering over his wounds. She could feel his life, his strong, vibrant heartbeat, fading through the bond, becoming a faint, thready echo. He was dying. Her deepest fear was here. A living nightmare. She had lost control, and now she was losing everything. Him, Lily, the pack, all of it, gone. Because of her. Valerius took another step closer. Don't worry, little witch. His strength will not be wasted. Soon, it will be mine. And so, will you. Despair. Absolute. Suffocating. It crushed her. She was powerless. Alone. The man she loved was dying at her feet, and the monster who had ruined their lives was coming to claim his prize. In the stillness that followed, there was nothing left. No hope. No power. Just the faint, fading echo of a heartbeat. And then, beneath the despair, something else. A flicker. The memory of Lily's smile. The feel of Porter's lips on her mark. A single, tiny ember of rage began to glow in the darkness. Chapter 19. Despair. It was a cold, heavy blanket, but beneath it, that tiny ember of rage glowed hotter. As Valerius loomed over them, a smug smile on his face, Rachel looked at Porter's still form. She felt the faint, fluttering echo of his heartbeat through their bond, a fragile thread in the roaring darkness, and she held on to it. She would not let it break. As if summoned, memories flooded her. Luna Alara's voice. Emotion is not a weakness, child. It is a conduit. Lily's bright, trusting smile. The feel of Porter's lips on hers. A promise of home. Love. It wasn't a weakness. No. It was fuel. She felt it. A surge of energy from far away. From the cabin. It was Lily. Her sister, now whole and healthy, was pushing her own quiet strength back through their shared bloodline. A lifeline of pure, unwavering hope. Something inside her shifted. Her power wasn't about control. It was about connection. So, she didn't try to suppress the grief, the fury, the terror. Instead, she opened the floodgates. She drew it all in. The love for her sister. The devotion to her dying mate. The white-hot rage for the monster who had caused it all. The mark on her shoulder exploded with green light, so bright it hurt. Valerius stumbled back, shielding his eyes. What is this? The earth around her groaned. The ground itself seemed to answer the call of her rage. She rose to her feet, no longer a scared, weak girl, but something ancient, something terrible. You wanted the power of the Earth's chosen? Her voice was no longer her own. It was a low, dangerous rumble, the sound of grinding stone and shifting roots. Before he could answer, she threw her hands forward. It wasn't a calculated spell. It was a raw, untamed wave of pure emotion. A blast of green energy and swirling, thorny vines erupted from the ground, slamming into Valerius, throwing him back against the wall of the lodge. The forest held its breath. The fighting stopped, and everyone, rogue and pack wolf alike, stared at the witch who stood in the eye of the storm. Chapter 20. In the quiet that followed, the remaining rogues, their alpha momentarily defeated, faltered. Seeing their chance, the Blood Moon warriors rallied, driving the stunned attackers back into the forest. The immediate danger was gone, but the cost was laid bare in the wounded and the dying. The victory. It felt hollow. Rachel rushed to Porter's side, the storm of her magic receding, leaving a clear, cold purpose in its wake. She knelt, placing her trembling hands on his chest. "Elara, help me," she pleaded. "The ritual, it failed. But this..." Luna Elara was there, her eyes filled with a dawning awe. "The ritual did not fail, child. It was incomplete. It needed your heart. Now, guide it." Rachel closed her eyes, focusing on the warmth still humming beneath her skin. She didn't try to pull power from the earth. No. Instead, she focused on Porter, on the faint heartbeat. She poured all of her love, her grief, and her fierce will to live into the bond, sending it like a wave of healing light into his broken body.
Darkness. Cold. A silent, empty void. He was dying. He knew it. He could feel his connection to the pack, to the world, fraying like an old rope. And then, warmth. A gentle green light blooming in the cold darkness. It was Rachel. Her love, her fierce spirit pouring into him through the bond, mending what was torn, healing what was broken. His eyes fluttered open. The first thing he saw was her face, pale and tear-streaked, but radiating a power that stole his very breath. He could feel it. She had embraced her magic. Fully. He tried to sit up, a groan escaping his lips. "Easy," she whispered, her hands steady on him. "You need to rest." "No," he rasped, his voice rough. "No more resting." He looked past her and saw Kale, now conscious and being tended to, rallying the other warriors. He saw the grim determination on their faces. They were looking at Rachel with a newfound reverence. Their Luna. "What is the plan?" he asked, his gaze locking with hers. "The plan," she said, her voice steady and strong, "is to finish this. We're going to the Heartwood Glade, and we're ending him, where it all began." Chapter 21. The journey to the Heartwood Glade was tense. Every shadow seemed to hold a threat. Every gust of wind sounded like a whispered warning. Yet this time, there was no fear in him. He walked beside Rachel, his body aching, but his spirit roaring with pride. She was his mate, his Luna, and she was leading them to war. Her transformation was complete. She was no longer just a scientist. She was a force of nature.
With every step she took deeper into the forest, she felt her power grow. The woods no longer felt alien. It felt like an extension of herself. She could feel the roots of the trees deep in the earth, the life humming in every single leaf. At her command, thorny barricades grew across side trails, diverting any of Valerius's pursuing scouts. She wrapped the path behind them in a disorienting mist. Her mind, once a fortress of logic, now a canvas for magic. Porter was a silent, solid presence at her side. He didn't question her commands. He didn't offer advice. He simply trusted her, his presence a steady anchor for her wild, surging power. As if fate demanded it, their bond was now a perfect circuit of strength, flowing both ways. Eventually, they reached the clearing. The air here was different, corrupted. The ground was black and cracked. The ancient trees that formed the glade's circle, twisted and dying. In the center, beside the withered remains of the luminous emerald flower, stood Valerius. He was waiting for them. He was no longer sneering. His clothes were torn, his face bruised from her earlier attack. But his eyes burned with a furious, obsessive light. Dark energy swirled around him, a vortex of stolen power. As the sky darkened, he began to chant. The words, a low, guttural curse. The final battle was here, and the heart of the forest held its breath, waiting for the end. Chapter 22. The air crackled with dark power, Valerius chanted, his voice a venomous hiss, and the corrupted ground of the glade pulsed with a sickening black light. He was drawing on the pain of the land, twisting it into a weapon. "You are too late, little witch!" he screamed over the roaring wind. "This power is mine." "This power was never yours to take," Rachel answered, her voice calm and surprisingly clear. She planted her feet, feeling the roots of the ancient forest as if they were her own bones. She reached for the bond, for the steady, unyielding strength of her alpha. With his scent in the air, she felt Porter's love, his trust, and it became her shield.
He saw the battle in a way no one else could. He saw it, the shimmering green shield of Rachel's magic, pushing back against the suffocating darkness of Valerius's ritual. While she held the monster at bay, he and the pack charged, their goal simple: protect their Luna at all costs. He fought with a clarity he'd never known, his wolf and man in perfect deadly sync. Each blow he landed on a corrupted rogue felt like a blow for Rachel, for the future she was fighting for. He saw Valerius falter, his concentration breaking as Rachel's pure, clean power overwhelmed his stolen magic. In a desperate rage, Valerius abandoned the ritual and lunged, not at the pack, but directly at Rachel. There was no time to think, no time for anything but instinct. Porter launched himself forward, a black-furred blur of protective fury. He put his body between his mate and the monster. A searing, white-hot agony exploded in his chest. Valerius's claws, slick with dark energy, plunged deep. He hit the ground with a sickening thud, the world going gray at the edges.
She felt it, the moment his heart faltered. The bond screamed with his pain, a catastrophic agony that ripped through her soul. She saw him fall, her protector, her mate, her porter, and something inside her snapped. The grief, the love, the fury, it all coalesced into a single point of devastating power. No! The word was not a scream, it was a command. And the earth itself roared with her. The ancient trees of the heartwood groaned, their roots tearing through the corrupted soil. The ground beneath Valerius shattered, and a column of pure, untamed life force, the very soul of the forest, erupted from below. It engulfed him in a blinding green fire. He had time for one single, terrified scream. And then there was only silence. Chapter 23. In the echo of his voice, the silence that followed the battle was profound. The dark energy that had choked the glade for so long, it was gone, leaving behind only the clean scent of rain and damp earth. But Rachel saw none of it. Her world had narrowed to the man bleeding out on the forest floor. "Porter," she sobbed, scrambling to his side. She pressed her hands against the terrible wound in his chest, the bond a faint, flickering thread between them. "Don't you dare leave me," she pleaded through that bond. "You don't get to save me just to die." Instead of pulling power from the earth, she did what she had done for Lily. She poured herself into him. All her love, all her newfound strength, all her desperate, stubborn will. She pushed it all through the bond, a river of healing green light. As the light flowed from her hands, she felt the torn muscle begin to knit, the bleeding begin to slow. It was working. The stillness that followed was broken by the sound of running feet. Kyle and the other pack members approached, their faces a mixture of grief and awe. They watched as the black, cracked soil of the glade began to change. Where Rachel knelt, a circle of soft green grass spread outwards, and the withered petals of the emerald flower began to regain their color. She wasn't just healing Porter, she was healing the heart of the forest itself. A beat later, another sound reached her, a joyful cry. "Rachel!" She looked up, and her heart stopped all over again. Running into the glade, her face bright with health, her steps strong and sure, was Lily. Her sister was completely healed, drawn here by the final triumphant surge of Rachel's power. Lily threw her arms around Rachel's neck, and as Rachel held her sister tight, her tears of grief finally turned to tears of overwhelming joy. The price had been high, but the battle was finally, truly over.
Chapter 24. Come morning, months later. Porter stood on the great ridge, the sun warm on his face. The scar on his chest was a faint, silvery reminder, but there was no pain, only strength. He looked down at the packlands, at the thriving, happy community. At his side, Rachel leaned against him, her head on his shoulder. Their bond was no longer a fragile thread or a raging fire. It was a calm, steady, unbreakable cord connecting their souls. She had become their Luna in every sense of the word. She had merged her scientific knowledge with her earth witch magic, revolutionizing their healing practices and helping them cultivate the land in ways they'd never dreamed of. She was respected, admired, loved. She was his partner, his equal, his everything. "What are you thinking about?" she murmured, her voice sending a familiar shiver of desire through him. "I'm thinking," he said, turning to cup her face in his hands, "that the day I marked you was the day my life truly began."
She smiled, a genuine, peaceful smile that reached her eyes. The question that had haunted her for so long, can I surrender to a love that claims me without losing myself, was finally answered. Surrendering to Porter's love hadn't meant losing herself. It had meant finding the parts of her she never knew were missing. The witch, the Luna, the mate. "I think my life began then, too," she whispered, leaning in to kiss him. The kiss was soft, full of promise and the quiet joy of a shared future. Meanwhile, Lily, now a vibrant young woman with a special connection to the forest's creatures, was teaching the pack's children how to identify healing herbs. The open loops of their lives had finally closed, creating a circle of family, love, and duty. That night, they stood together, hand in hand, overlooking the Heartwood glade. The forest was more alive than it had been in centuries, the emerald flower now the center of a flourishing, magical garden. The mark on her shoulder glowed with a soft, gentle light, not a brand of ownership, but a beautiful, shining symbol of a love that had healed a curse, saved a pack, and merged two worlds into one. Epilogue. Years later, the legend of the Alpha who marked the Earth Witch was a favorite story told to pack pups, a tale of destiny, of a love that transcended worlds. But for the Alpha and his Luna, it wasn't a legend. It was simply their beginning. Thank you so much for watching this video. We really appreciate you spending your time with us. If you enjoyed what you saw, we've got a whole library of other videos packed with more great content just like this waiting for you on our channel. So why not dive into another one right now? And hey, if you want to make sure you don't miss out on our next upload, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell. We'd love to have you join our community and see you in the next video. Thanks again.